To another episode of Kitchen Table Conversations, inviting you to pull up a seat to the table and talk about the hard things surrounding food insecurity, as well as the incredible work that so many people are doing. Today, we have my friend Shaelen Hudson here to talk about the work that she's doing in her community, which I am so inspired by. Shaelen, I would love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background, both personally and as a title holder, and then maybe what inspired your passion for food insecurity.
Well, thank you so much, Mackenzie, for having me. Like she said, my name is Shaelen Hudson. I'm Miss Metropolis 2026, which is a local preliminary to Miss Illinois. I'll be competing in a little under a month, which I'm super excited about. A little bit about me is I'm from Southern Illinois originally and went to college at Ole Miss, where I got a degree in biochemistry and business. And I am finishing up my first year of medical school at Tulane School of Medicine in New Orleans. I have been competing in the Miss America organization pretty much my entire life. I started at 10 years old as a preteen and have competed as a teen and now a Miss. I actually competed in Miss Mississippi once with Mackenzie and was a former Miss Tupelo. So we get to be sisters in that way, which is super fun. Um, my community service initiative, Leading the Fight Against Hunger, was largely inspired by my experience volunteering at my local food pantries with my family. I so vividly remember this one time I volunteered. I was very young and very little. I stood on a milk crate upside down to pass out the butter because of how little and young I was. And I remember seeing a classmate of mine come through the food pantry line to receive a meal. And that really opened my eyes to how important food insecurity is and how prevalent it is. And so when picking my community service initiative, that's something that always stuck with me and was something that I wanted to get involved in and make a difference in.
Yeah. I'm always so impressed by you, the things you're doing, your heart for service. And I think that story is really important because so often we face this issue when trying to spread awareness about food insecurity where people know it's a problem, but they think, not here, not in my neighborhood or my school or the people that I know. And food insecurity can look like so many different things in so many different communities. And it's really cool that you get to share that story on your journey to competition season. I want to focus in on your background in medical school, which again is so exciting. We're thrilled for you. But as somebody studying medicine while advocating for better food access, what have you observed about the connection between nutrition and healthcare?
Yeah. So I've been honestly shocked by how strong the connection between food and healthcare is. I think there is a good amount that people are aware of. Everyone has heard if you eat carrots, it's good for your eyes, or if you drink milk, it's good for your bones. And that is very true. I've been having learned it in medical school. That is definitely two things that are true. But I've been so surprised how many different things in food, whether it be vitamins or protein, how a lack of those can lead to so many different diseases and conditions. I won't get too in the weeds of the science or anything, but we're learning about blood disorders right now, and we just learned like a laundry list of vitamin deficiencies that can lead to different disorders in the blood. And throughout this last year, I've just been so surprised by just how strong that connection is. And I don't think it's something that a lot of people are aware of because I know I wasn't even aware of it until just this year. And I think there's kind of a missing piece of education there for our society, of just how important proper nutrition is. And one thing that I've really shifted my community service initiative focus to, especially when it comes to presentations and educating the general public, is not only access to food, but also access to nutritional food, which I know is a big focus of your community service initiative. Obviously, not focus, obviously, access to any food is better than no food, but really educating people on how important nutritious food is, especially now seeing just how important it is on the healthcare side. I haven't been able to see a lot of cases of it in a real clinical context. I'm still doing mostly like book learning of just the basic principles of things, but even learning about it, it's just been so eye-opening to me of how important nutrition is.
I feel like I've learned so much about that more recently too, partially because of the Miss America organization's partnership with the American Heart Association and learning how our nutrition is so important for our cardiovascular health has been really fascinating. But you have more of the health background, which is awesome. And then my background is more in policy, but there's this initiative that's taking root in Mississippi, kind of meeting in the middle called Food is Medicine, where we're actually, providing these prescriptions for foods that are rich in certain vitamins and minerals through part of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is really a cool marriage of those two ideas, hoping to, like you said, not only increase access to food, but really looking at food that's going to improve long-term health outcomes, and hopefully be preventative medicine. I would love to talk about that a little bit because it is an increasingly important conversation in public health. What does the idea of food as medicine mean to you? And do you think there's a space for healthcare systems to discuss nutrition as a form of preventative medicine?
Yeah, you did a great job explaining what food as medicine is. And I think what I love about food as medicine is that we are viewing food and nutrition not only as medicine to, treat a lot of chronic conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, but also it is a preventative measure for not only those things if you haven't already developed them, but a whole other list of conditions. And I think there absolutely is a space in healthcare to promote this. A lot of that I think originates with our primary care providers who have that good connection with their patients. They know about their lifestyle and their resources. And I think it's definitely something that I would love to see a shift towards. Bringing that up in those yearly wellness visits, just kind of getting a gauge of what people are eating and present this to them. I think a lot of people we've heard the notion of like eating healthy is good for you, but I don't think a lot of people understand what health benefits it really has for them. I think a lot of, especially in recent years, the conversation of eating certain foods has been associated to diet and physical appearance. And for some people, that is triggering or they just don't care about it. There's a lot of, things that go into that. But I think presenting food as medicine, is something that could have a lot of potential benefits, and I think is something that a lot more people would be willing to get on board with, especially as costs of things are rising, prescription medications being one of them. A lot of people are uninsured. That's something I've really noticed moving to New Orleans, just a high population of underserved patients here that don't have access to medicine and food because, like you said, it can be provided through supplemental nutritional assistance program. I think this is something that I would love to see come to fruition for sure.
Absolutely. Like you said, there's just so much intersectionality here in this issue of we're talking about health. And then from the policy side, there's the economic standpoint and the long-term investment. There's the strain on our healthcare systems, especially in rural communities. And food as medicine is kind of a meeting point where all of those issues do intersect. And then hopefully where we can start to promote a long-term sustainable solution to food insecurity as well as adverse health outcomes that we're trying to avoid from a patient standpoint. You do so much good work. I would love if you could share a project or maybe an experience or a partnership on this journey that was especially meaningful to you and how it shaped the way that you think about food insecurity.
Yeah, a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I partnered with Feeding Illinois on and became an ambassador for their Farmers Feeding Illinois initiative. Illinois is a very large agricultural state, and so one of the big initiatives with that is Farm to Food Bank, which encourages local farmers to donate their excess crops to food banks, whether that is crops that they weren't able to sell due to demand, or if it was a quality issue, if there's still of consumable quality with nutritional value, they're trying to encourage them to donate them to different food banks. And this has been such a really cool project for me to get to work with them on and learn about because it really showed me that there are solutions and that there is hope for ending food insecurity or at least like significantly increasing access to nutritional food. I think the obvious solution that people think of is them donating items to the food pantry, but that not only isn't sustainable, but it's not realistic for everyone. And through things like Farm to Food Bank and Farmers Feeding Illinois, it really showed me that you just have to be creative with the resources that are already existing. Another component of that is Hunters Feeding Illinois, which encourages people to donate meat that they obtain from hunting to food banks, which is something that I'm super excited by because that's something that is difficult to donate from an everyday person standpoint. You can't really take ground beef to the food pantry. And so working with this initiative has, like I said, just really reshaped my thinking that there really is hope and that there really are possible solutions out there for food insecurity and to really take advantage of where there is excess food. There is such a divide, I feel like, in terms of like the spectrum of like, you might get this. One thing that really opened my eyes was being in a sorority and seeing how much extra food was left over at the end of meals. And then there's the other end of the spectrum of people who don't have access to food. And I think bridging that gap is something that's super important and something that I would love to see in the future. That's one of my biggest goals, is connecting different organizations and restaurants, but just really taking advantage of the resources that are already existing to help increase access to food.
Yeah. Oh, so much good stuff there. Those existing initiatives are really cool and innovative that they have in Illinois. I'll do some more reading on that in Mississippi, but that's why, sharing food, sharing hope and my community service initiative is, of course, encouraging action, and mobilizing college students specifically to volunteer with food pantries. But that's kind of a short-term solution, a band-aid to a much larger systemic issue, which is why we have to focus on changing the food environment as a whole. And I love how you mentioned the experience of living in a Greek house. I lived in a chapter facility for 3 years, and we actually did try to start an initiative where we could donate to subsidized housing communities in Oxford and different living facilities here our extra food. But there are so many legal regulations around that. Not to note, as an incoming law student, but there's so many things, and as a corporation, you're actually not under the Good Samaritan law, which is super interesting. So that's something I hope to advance because I do think those areas where there's excess food is a way that we could shift to continue to help those without. But then, kind of future focusing to wrap us up, looking ahead, what changes would you most like to see, whether it's in medicine or policy or community health, to create those healthier communities and improve access to nutritious food?
Yeah. Wow. There's so many things that
It's
could
a
be done.
lot.
Yeah. One of the things I mentioned in my previous question, just bridging that gap between excess food and food banks or different organizations that provide food. I didn't even realize all of the legal things that go on with it. I'm obviously aware that there are a lot of issues there, but as I I try to stick to medicine as my area of focus. But, I think seeing changes there would be a really great thing to start with. That's something that I think is very realistic and attainable, and that's something that I try to focus on with my community service initiative. It actually started as creating an end to hunger one meal at a time. And I shifted that to leading the fight against hunger because I realized that I personally could not end hunger. And so one thing that I think that is a realistic solution later down the road with some policy reform, some laws, some better regulations on donating excess food. Another thing that I think would be super important for another long-term and sustainable option because, like you mentioned, volunteering at the food pantry, donating goods are extremely important, but they are a little bit of band-aid solutions. And so I think a lot of it lies within policy. Again, I'm not super huge into the weeds of policy, but it's something that I would love to get more involved in upon becoming Miss Illinois, because I think there's a lot of reevaluation that could go on in our nutritional assistance programs. As we're all aware, the economy has really shifted lately. Things are very expensive. And I think the original thresholds and the allotments that people get just isn't sustainable for what they need anymore. And so I think reevaluating those thresholds, I would love to see more funds allocated, which obviously brings up a whole nother issue of where does it come from. But I think really working with the policy is somewhere that I would love to see in the future for not only myself, but just others in food insecurity. And I know that you've done a lot with policy through school and just your own personal interests. And you honestly really inspired me to try to get into that side of food insecurity because over the years, my community service initiative has definitely shifted the focus of it and my message. And yeah, so I would love to get a little bit more into that and kind of use you as inspiration, honestly.
Well, that is so kind. But I mean, I learned so much from you, and I love how you mentioned that your message has evolved over time because one of the beautiful things about the community service initiative component of Miss America is that it encourages long-term advocacy. And as you continue to invest in something and learn about something, you obviously get a new perspective and you maybe start to see root causes that you didn't know before. You start to learn about innovative solutions. You meet people that push you to be better and think more critically and think differently. I am certainly thankful that you are one of those people for me who has educated me more about the health implications of this issue. And I think everybody's lucky to get to hear from you today,
Oh,
and to
thank
learn
you.
from you. I want to thank you for being part of this initiative, for continuing to lead the fight against hunger. And we are wishing you the best in Miss Illinois. And as you finish your first year at medical school, we are so, so proud of you. And all of your official social media channels will be linked below if you want to follow along with her journey to Miss Illinois and all of the incredible work that she is doing. We will see you next week for another episode of Kitchen Table Conversations.